Mr. President. And I also would like to say a few words about the Subordinate Legislation and Administrative Arrangements Amendment Bill 2024. And I'm happy to say that I'm in complete agreement with Mr. Mulholland on this one. Most of what this bill does is mostly technical things, but one of the things that it does, which concerns me greatly, is it clarifies in a very bad way how orders through the pandemic powers or other emergency powers should be exempt from scrutiny by Parliament. And I note that in the last term of Parliament there was much discussion about whether these orders should be treated as subordinate legislative instruments or not. And I note that Mr. Davis from the last term of Parliament actually raised this point many times, both in here and with me. And it appears that this bill appears to make it very certain that they are exempt from parliamentary scrutiny. That is not good, because I don't think that that will be a very good thing for the future. And as Mr. Mulholland pointed out, many things that happened during the pandemic, as the history books are already starting to show, were some of the most crazy overreach and restrictions on people's rights that we've ever seen in this state. I've said it many times and I'll keep saying it. What was done to children was something that throughout human history, we sacrificed the welfare of children to benefit everyone else, because children were never in danger from COVID. We knew that right from the start. Children were not in danger, and yet we locked them up, we took them out of school, we locked them in their houses, we forced them to take medicine that their parents might not have wanted them to have. We did all sorts of horrible things to them, and they were sacrificed, their welfare was sacrificed for the benefit of everyone else. You know, how many civilisations throughout history have done that? It was absolutely outrageous what happened. I tried in the last term of Parliament, we moved motions to try and push the government to open the schools. They voted against that. They didn't want that. And I'm hoping that, you know, with some reflection, I know that people in the community now, even people that supported the government during the pandemic, I note that there's a lot of people that are now questioning all those things that happened, because they look back at it now and it's like a bad dream, it's like a nightmare. They can't believe that we descended so quickly into such an awful state where, you know, like Mr. Mulholland was saying, like people couldn't even walk out on the street. Women, grandmas were attacked in parks for, you know, sitting there with their friends. They put bunting around the parks because mums were sitting there and having a coffee. I mean, this is absolutely insane levels of power-mad control. And one of the things that lots of people mistake is they say, oh, the government did this, the government did this, the government did this. I actually think that what the government did is that they stepped away and they let the public health bureaucrats take over. We got a glimpse of what happens. We got a glimpse of what happens when you let the public health bureaucrats take over. You give them these tiny KPI. The KPI is to stop disease transmission, and then everything else can go to hell. That's like everything else they don't care about, and they've got unlimited power. The government's role on this should have been to show some sort of moral authority to say, no, you've gone too far, and pull them back, but that didn't happen. So as a solution to this, a part solution, what I am proposing is an amendment to this. Can I get that amendment circulated now, please?
You can continue on, Mr. Limbrick.
Thank you. What my amendment does is changes the way that orders made under the Emergency Management Act, Public Health and Wellbeing Act 2008, or a national emergency under the National Emergency Declaration Act 2020 of the Commonwealth, are always subject to parliamentary scrutiny. So this does not stop the government making emergency declarations. It does not stop them making emergency orders. But what it does do is it allows a safeguard, and that safeguard is that Parliament has the ability to disallow these orders. And I think that this should have happened during the pandemic. And I think that this is an appropriate response, because it should be the case that if Parliament thinks that they've gone too far, that the health bureaucrats or whoever's in charge has gone too far, that they have that ability as a safety valve to be able to say, no, we do not accept this. And I think that there are sufficient tensions in the system, because Parliament doing that, bringing that up and voting for it, they are, from that point, they are taking responsibility for that action, and they will be held accountable. And so I know that I wouldn't support anything, undermining an emergency order unless I was absolutely certain that it was wrong what they were doing. And I tell you, there was a lot that I was certain of that was wrong during the pandemic, and closing the schools was one. That was wrong. We knew it then, we know it now, and if there had have been that possibility, then I think that maybe these people who exercise this power might not have gone so far, because they would know that if they went too far, maybe Parliament might step in, right? And I think that sort of knowledge that there's always someone that can stop them would be a good thing, and it would stop them overreaching as if they're unlimited dictators, unbound by norms, that they just do whatever they like, because that's pretty much what happened during the pandemic. And there needs to be some sort of safety valve so that Parliament can put its fist down and say, no, you've gone too far. And I think that is a good amendment. I think it's a reasonable amendment. It does not obstruct the government, handling emergencies. It doesn't slow it down, but there is a safety valve there that will always be in the minds of the bureaucrats that come up with the orders. They'll think, have I gone too far with this? It'll force them to think a little bit. We saw that one of the checks in the pandemic orders and prior to that under the emergency powers under the Public Health and Wellbeing Act was meant to be the Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities. That failed. That safeguard failed, utterly failed. The proportionality that is meant to be measured, the proportionality of the restrictions on human rights that is meant to be measured when these decisions are made, none of those were made public until the pandemic bill came in. And then when we finally got to look at the pandemic declaration orders, they had they published summaries of the human rights assessments. They were nonsense. Like many of these justifications for these extreme actions were so lacking and so poorly written. Even some of the references to scientific information were wrong in them. And this is what they were relying on through the pandemic. We saw through the Ombudsman's investigation into the housing tower lockdowns, when they were queried about the human rights charter assessment that they're meant to do. They said, you know what they said? They said, it's a mental process, a mental process, a mental process. They locked down the housing towers. They couldn't even get outside and get some fresh air and exercise. And then the Libertarian Party moved an amendment to try and get fresh air and exercise guaranteed, into the pandemic or into the emergency orders. And that was voted down, fresh air and exercise. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. So we need to have some sort of safeguard here so that this doesn't happen again, and that's what I'm proposing. Thank you.